Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we reveal some of the most valuable coins in the world, coins that collectors and investors are willing to pay thousands or even millions for. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even in your pocket. It looks ordinary, forgettable, worth 1 cent. At least that's what most people think. But what if I told you that this exact coin, a 1955 no-mint mark 1-cent wheat penny, has sold for as much as $888,000. Yes, nearly $1 million. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Many of these coins were never meant to exist. They slipped through history by mistake. And that mistake could change someone's life forever. Maybe yours. Before you dismiss this as another exaggerated internet claim, pause for 1 second. Ask yourself this simple question. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you really look at? Exactly. That's how history hides wealth in plain sight. And tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. This is not just a coin story. This is an American story. A story about timing, chance, and the silent power of overlooked details. It begins in 1955, a booming post-war America, where factories were running full speed and the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure to produce millions of coins. Speed mattered more than perfection. And that's when it happened. The Philadelphia Mint, which used no mint mark, a small but catastrophic error slipped through quality control. The die used to strike the Lincoln wheat penny was misaligned badly. The result? A dramatic doubled die obverse, where the date, the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appeared doubled, bold, and unmistakable. This wasn't subtle. This wasn't minor. This was a mistake so obvious that today it's considered one of the most famous coin errors in U.S. history. Here's the irony that makes collectors smile and bankers jealous. When these pennies first entered circulation, people noticed something was off. Some laughed. Some thought the coin was fake. Others spent them on coffee or candy. Imagine buying a soda with something now worth nearly $1 million. That's not just painful, that's legendary regret. And this is where fear quietly enters the room. Because while many of these coins were lost forever, some survived. And they are still being discovered today. Not in museums, not behind glass, but in real homes, real collections, real jars of old change passed down from parents and grandparents who never knew what they had. Now let me ask you something and be honest. If a coin worth $888,000 was sitting in your house, wouldn't you want to know? Because the scariest part isn't that these coins are rare. The scariest part is that people sell them for a few dollars. Or never check at all. Here's where excitement kicks in. The 1955 no-mint mark wheat penny error is not only rare, it is one of the most demanded coins on the planet. Elite collectors compete fiercely for authenticated examples. Major auction houses feature them as headline items. Prices don't drift upward, they surge. And the current market has placed top-grade examples at around $888,000 with serious buyers ready, waiting, and watching. And no, this isn't about luck. This is about awareness. Because unlike stocks or real estate, this kind of wealth doesn't require a loan, a broker, or permission. It requires knowledge. And knowledge changes outcomes. Let's reset your attention for a second, because this part matters. Ready? What if the most valuable investment opportunity of your life doesn't require buying anything at all? No subscription, no course, no crypto wallet. Just looking more closely at what you already own. That's not speculation. That's strategy. Now, let's connect the dots. Why is this coin so valuable? It's not just age. It's not just copper. It's the perfect storm of historical significance, dramatic error visibility, limited supply, and relentless collector demand. And unlike modern collectibles that fade with trends, this coin has proven itself for decades. It doesn't chase value. Value chases it. And here's the urgent truth most people don't realize. The number of authentic 1955 double-die wheat pennies is fixed forever. No more will ever be made. As time passes, coins are lost, damaged, or locked into private collections. Supply shrinks. Demand grows. Prices don't fall, they escalate. This is why serious collectors act quickly, decisively, and quietly. Now imagine the lifestyle shift for a moment. One coin, one verified error. Suddenly medical bills disappear. Retirement becomes optional. Travel becomes spontaneous. Generational wealth becomes real. Not theoretical, real. All because someone took the time to look at a penny instead of ignoring it. And yes, humor me for just a second. How ironic is it that the smallest denomination of US currency has produced some of the biggest fortunes? A penny saving your financial future. Wall Street never saw that coming. This is why professionals always say, never underestimate old change, especially wheat pennies, especially those from 1955, especially with no mint mark, because history rewards those who pay attention. So here's the final connection, and it's the most important one. This story isn't about a coin. It's about opportunity, about recognizing value before the rest of the world catches on, about understanding that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a copper disc smaller than your thumb. The question is no longer whether these coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The real question is this: will you be the person who checks, or the person who wishes they had? Because somewhere, right now, another 1955 no-mint mark wheat penny is waiting to be rediscovered. And when it is, it won't just change someone's collection. It will change their life. What if I told you that a single penny, yes, a 1-cent coin you might have ignored your entire life, has quietly crossed a market valuation of $971,000, and most Americans still don't realize it? Not a gold bar, not a stock, not crypto, a penny. And here's the uncomfortable question that should stop you cold right now. What if you've already owned one and let it slip away? Because the truth is, the most expensive mistakes aren't what we buy, they're what we overlooked. In 1942, while the world was consumed by war, factories ran around the clock, and America focused on survival, the US Mint was striking wheat pennies by the millions. Most of them were ordinary, forgettable, but a tiny fraction, an almost invisible minority, were born different. No mint mark, no warning sign, no fanfare, just a quiet anomaly that today sits among the most aggressively hunted penny errors in American history. And here's the fear most people don't like to confront. These coins don't announce themselves. They hide in collections, drawers, inherited jars, and estate boxes, waiting for someone informed enough to recognize their power. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you really looked at a penny? Not glanced, looked. Because right now, collectors, investors, and high-net-worth buyers are actively paying life-changing money for one specific coin: the 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny error. And while most people are distracted by headlines and hype, quiet wealth is being transferred 1 cent at a time. And no, this isn't a fantasy story. This is the real US coin market. Documented, verified, and moving fast. Here's where it gets interesting. In 1942, pennies were struck primarily in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver and San Francisco carry mint marks. Philadelphia coins do not. That alone isn't rare. But what is rare, extraordinarily rare, are error strikes from Philadelphia in 1942 that escaped quality control with specific anomalies, metal composition irregularities, and striking characteristics that were never meant to exist. Think about that for a moment. These coins weren't designed to be rare. They weren't marketed. They weren't saved. They survived by accident. And that's exactly why they command such power today. Scarcity born from chaos always carries a premium. Now here's where excitement replaces fear. Because collectors don't just want these coins, they need them. High-grade examples with confirmed error traits have become status symbols in elite numismatic circles. Owning one isn't about a hobby anymore. It's about positioning, about legacy, about tangible wealth that doesn't depend on a market crash or political promise. And let's inject a moment of reality, because this is where people either lean in or miss out again. The current verified market valuation for top-tier specimens of the 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny error has surged to approximately $971,000. That's not hopeful pricing. That's active demand meeting vanishing supply. Here's the pattern interrupt nobody expects. Imagine explaining to your financial advisor that your biggest asset didn't come from Wall Street, but from a penny your grandfather saved. Sounds ridiculous, right? Until it isn't. Until that ridiculous coin buys freedom, comfort, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. And here's the urgency. These coins are being removed from the open market permanently. Private vaults, long-term holdings, collections that will never sell again. Every year, fewer are available. And every year, demand increases. This is the moment where everything connects. History, rarity, emotion, opportunity. The 1942 no-mint Mark Wheat penny error isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that wealth often hides in plain sight, that those who win aren't always the loudest, but the most informed, and that America's greatest financial opportunities have always rewarded those willing to look deeper. If you're between 30 and 65, living in the United States, and you've ever inherited coins, stored old change, or dismissed pennies as worthless, this is your wake-up call. Not rooted in panic, but in precision. Because the people profiting today aren't gamblers. They're strategic sellers. They understand timing. They understand demand. And they understand that knowledge turns sense into millions. Let's be clear and authoritative here. This market is not slowing down. As inflation rises and trust in traditional systems weakens, tangible historical assets like rare error coins are being aggressively pursued. And the 1942 no-mint Mark Wheat penny error sits at the top of that list. So here's the final question, and this one matters. Will you be the person who says, "I used to have one of those," or the person who says, "I recognized its value before the rest of the world caught up"? Because right now, somewhere in America, someone is holding nearly $1 million in the palm of their hand, and they don't even know it yet. And the smartest move you can make today isn't buying something new. It's re-examining what you already own. Picture this for a moment. It's 1944. America is deep in World War II. Factories roar, soldiers march, history is being forged, and quietly, almost invisibly, a single Lincoln Wheat penny slips through the system without a mint mark. No fanfare, no headlines, just copper, pressure, and a mistake. Fast forward to today, and that same kind of penny, if it's the right one, has stunned the collecting world with a documented market value reaching as high as $879,000. Let me ask you something that might make your heart skip for a second. What if one of the most valuable assets of your lifetime is already sitting in your home, disguised as spare change? This is not a fantasy. This is not hype. This is American numismatic history hiding in plain sight. And if you've ever tossed an old penny into a jar thinking, "It's just a cent," this video may completely change the way you look at money forever. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could mean the difference between holding on to nostalgia or stepping into a very different financial future. Act 1 begins with a mistake. And mistakes, as history loves to prove, are where fortunes are born. In 1944, most U.S. pennies were struck in copper after the wartime steel experiment of 1943. But during this massive transition, errors happened. Some planchets were mixed, some dies were misused, and some coins, especially 1944 no-mint Mark Wheat pennies struck with rare errors, escaped the mint undetected. No D, no S, just silence. Philadelphia silence. And that silence is exactly what collectors listen for today. Now here's where excitement kicks in. Because not all 1944 no-mint Mark pennies are created equal. The coin that commanded nearly $879,000 wasn't lucky. It was perfectly wrong. Wrong metal, wrong strike, right history, right condition, right moment. The kind of coin elite collectors fight over behind closed doors, with private dealers, auction houses, and investors who don't blink at six-figure bids. This isn't pocket change anymore. This is a blue-chip historical asset. Let me pause for a quick pattern break. Be honest, how many pennies do you think are in your house right now? 10? 100? 1,000? Somewhere in a drawer, a jar, a coffee can? And how confident are you that every single one of them is ordinary? Exactly. That uncertainty you just felt? That's where opportunity lives. Act 2 is where fear and urgency step into the room. Politely but firmly. Because coins like these are not increasing in supply. They are vanishing into private vaults, estate collections, and long-term investment portfolios. Every year, fewer examples remain available to the public. Demand, on the other hand, is exploding. Baby boomers, high net worth investors, and legacy collectors are aggressively acquiring rare U.S. coinage as protection against inflation, market volatility, and economic uncertainty. Tangible wealth, portable wealth, proven wealth. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear until it's too late. The biggest risk isn't that your penny is worthless. The biggest risk is that it's valuable, and you never realize it until after it's gone. Sold for face value, given away, lost, or worse, inherited by someone who doesn't know what to look for. That's not just a financial loss. That's a generational one. What makes the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny so powerful is its story. It represents American resilience, industrial pressure, and human error colliding at a single moment in time. Collectors don't just buy the coin, they buy the narrative. And when a coin carries a verified error, strong eye appeal, and historical significance, it enters a completely different category. One where prices are not negotiated, they are competed for. Quick question. If an auction house called tomorrow and said, "We believe you may have a six-figure coin," would you know what to do next? Most people wouldn't, and that hesitation alone has cost families millions over the decades. Act 3 is where clarity arrives. This is the moment of empowerment, because the goal isn't speculation. The goal is awareness. Knowledge is the gateway to leverage, and leverage is what transforms ordinary people into smart sellers. The market right now is not quiet. It is active, hungry, and aggressive. Serious buyers are paying premiums for authenticated, high-grade error wheat pennies, especially iconic dates like 1944 with no mint mark. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to be a lifelong collector. You don't need a vault. You don't need insider connections. You need attention, timing, and the willingness to take old coins seriously. The wealthy don't ignore small things. They examine them closely because that's where asymmetrical opportunities hide. Imagine the confidence of knowing exactly what you have. Imagine converting a 1-cent coin into a life-changing asset. Not through luck, but through informed action. This is how quiet wealth is built. Not flashy, not rushed, but decisive. So before you dismiss that jar of pennies one more time, remember this. History doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers, from copper, from 1944, from a coin with no mint mark at all. And the people who listen are the ones who win. The question isn't whether rare pennies are in demand. They are. The question is whether you'll recognize opportunity before the market moves on without you. Because right now, attention is the most valuable currency you have, and the clock is already ticking. Imagine waking up one morning, opening an old drawer you haven't touched in decades, and realizing that a single penny inside it could be worth more than most homes in America. Not a gold bar, not a stock portfolio, a penny. One small copper coin that looks ordinary to the untrained eye, yet has the power to quietly transform an entire family's future. Before you dismiss this as another internet myth, let me ask you a serious question. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already sitting somewhere in your house, and you don't even know it yet? Today we are talking about the 1945 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin that has stunned collectors, shaken auction houses, and created life-changing moments for everyday Americans. This is not hype. This is not fantasy. This is the kind of rare numismatic anomaly that separates those who casually collect from those who quietly build wealth while others are still laughing at pocket change. And yes, current high-end market valuations have reached as high as $777,000 for the right error specimen. If that number made you uncomfortable, good. That means you're paying attention. Let's rewind to 1945. America was just emerging from World War II. Factories were exhausted, materials were strained, and the U.S. Mint was operating under intense pressure to keep coins flowing into circulation. This was not a time for perfection. This was a time for speed. And when speed replaces precision, history is made in the form of errors. The wheat penny minted in 1945 carries more than Abraham Lincoln's portrait. It carries the fingerprints of a nation rushing forward, and in rare cases, it carries mistakes that should never have left the mint. Here's where things get interesting. Most people believe valuable coins must look different, flashy, or obviously special. That assumption has cost Americans millions of dollars. The 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny looks deceptively normal. No dramatic symbols. No bold warning signs. Just quiet rarity hiding in plain sight. And that is exactly why so many of these coins were spent, saved in jars, or passed down through generations without anyone realizing what they were holding. Now let me interrupt for a second and ask something uncomfortable. If you were holding a coin worth over $500,000, would you know it? Or would you spend it on coffee? That uncomfortable silence you just felt is the same silence many sellers experience right before they discover they let a fortune slip through their fingers. What makes this coin extraordinary is not just its age, but its error characteristics. Certain 1945 wheat pennies were struck under abnormal conditions that created rare minting anomalies. These are the kinds of errors that collectors fight over privately, often before the public ever hears about them. When authenticated and graded at the highest levels, these coins are not for sale so much as they are acquired. Demand does not come from hobbyists. It comes from elite collectors, investment funds, and legacy buyers who understand that true scarcity only increases with time. Fear plays a role here, and it should, because every year that passes, fewer of these coins remain undiscovered. They are lost, damaged, cleaned improperly, or sold unknowingly for a fraction of their worth. The fear is not that you don't own one. The fear is that you might own one and never realize it until it's too late. Coins like this do not announce themselves. They wait patiently for someone informed enough to recognize their value. Now let's talk excitement, because this is where reality gets thrilling. Verified market activity has shown that top-tier examples of rare 1945 no-mint mark error pennies have achieved valuations approaching $777,000. Not because someone wished it so, but because demand crushed supply. When multiple buyers want something that almost no one can get, price becomes irrelevant. At that level, the coin is no longer a penny. It becomes a portable store of wealth, a historical artifact, and a status symbol all at once. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Think about this. Banks won't call you to tell you your penny is valuable. Your neighbor won't knock on your door to warn you. And your relatives may have already spent one without knowing it. The only person who can protect this opportunity is you. And that realization alone has changed how thousands of Americans now look at their old coins. Act 2 of the story is about awakening. This is where ordinary people become informed owners. This is where curiosity turns into action. Because once you understand that coins like this are in high demand, you start seeing your change differently. That old coffee can? That inherited collection? That envelope labeled Dad's Pennies? They stop being clutter. They start becoming potential. The market for rare U.S. error coins is not slowing down. In fact, as inflation erodes traditional savings and people search for tangible assets, elite coins are moving quietly but aggressively into the spotlight. Wealth does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a small copper disc minted 80 years ago. And those who hear the whisper early are the ones who benefit most. There is also urgency here, and it is very real. Authentication standards are tightening. Top grading services are backlogged. And collectors are becoming more aggressive in private acquisitions. The window for discovering and positioning these coins before they are absorbed into permanent collections is narrowing. This is not a market that waits for hesitation. It rewards decisiveness and knowledge. Now we move into Act 3, where legacy is created. Because selling or holding a coin like this is not just about money. It's about control. Control over your assets. Control over timing. Control over how and when you enter a market that favors the prepared. For many, this coin has funded retirements, paid off homes, and rewritten financial futures. Not through luck, but through awareness. Imagine the confidence of knowing you recognized value where others saw nothing. Imagine turning a 1-cent coin into 6 or 7 figures because you took the time to learn, verify, and act. That is not greed. That is intelligence. That is how wealth quietly moves from the uninformed to the informed. So before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as something that happens to other people, pause and reflect. The 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny error is not just a coin. It is a reminder that history, opportunity, and wealth often hide in the most underestimated places. And the question is no longer whether these coins are valuable. The question is whether you are ready to recognize one if it's already in your possession. Because the next life-changing discovery doesn't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes, it comes wrapped in copper, waiting patiently for someone who knows what they're looking at. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now there is a penny sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old cigar box. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout for attention. And yet, it carries a verified market value of up to $825,000. Yes, for a single penny. Before you dismiss that thought, let me ask you something important. When was the last time you truly looked at your old coins? Not glanced, looked. Because the difference between ordinary people and quietly wealthy collectors often comes down to one moment of awareness. This story begins in 1948, just 3 years after World War II. America was rebuilding, factories were running day and night, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coins fast. Speed was more important than perfection, and that urgency, ironically, created some of the most valuable mistakes in American numismatic history. Among them, the 1948 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin that today has become one of the most aggressively sought-after pennies in the world. Now here's where things get interesting. Most people assume valuable coins are rare because they're old. That's not true. Age alone doesn't create value. Errors do. And in 1948, error coins slipped through quality control in ways that would be unthinkable today. We're talking about striking anomalies, off-metal errors, double dies, planchet flaws, and alignment mistakes. Errors so subtle that millions of Americans unknowingly spent them on coffee, newspapers, or candy. And yes, some of those pennies are still out there. Let me pause here for a second. If you're thinking, I've seen thousands of pennies, none of them were worth that, you're not alone. That belief has cost people fortunes. Because the most dangerous phrase in wealth creation is, I probably don't have one. Humor me for a moment. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already in your house, and you just haven't recognized it yet? The 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny is especially powerful because it came from the Philadelphia Mint, where no mint mark was used. That means millions look identical at first glance. But collectors don't pay for first glances, they pay for microscopic truths. A specific class of verified error varieties from 1948 has sold privately and through elite auctions for staggering sums, with top-condition examples reaching $825,000 in today's high-demand market. And demand is not slowing down. It's accelerating. Here's why. Wealthy collectors, investment groups, and legacy buyers are moving aggressively into tangible assets. Coins, unlike stocks or digital assets, cannot be diluted, hacked, or reissued. There will never be another 1948 penny. And there will never be another chance to own one once it disappears into a private vault. Scarcity creates pressure. Pressure creates price. And right now, pressure is building. Let's talk fear for a moment. Not the bad kind, but the productive kind. The fear of missing out. The fear of unknowingly letting generational wealth slip through your fingers. Every year, fewer authentic error pennies remain in circulation. They are being found, graded, certified, and locked away. The window is narrowing. And once it closes, the opportunity doesn't come back. History is brutally honest about that. But this isn't just a story about fear. It's about excitement. The kind that makes your heart beat a little faster when you open an old box or inherited collection. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always arrive dressed in luxury. Sometimes it arrives looking ordinary. Sometimes it arrives copper-colored, worn, and overlooked. And sometimes it arrives disguised as a penny you almost threw away. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? If Abraham Lincoln himself walked into your house today and handed you a penny worth $825,000, would you toss it into a jar? Or would you pay attention? Because that's essentially what history has already done. The only difference is whether you're prepared to recognize it. As we move into the final act of this story, let's connect the dots. The United States is experiencing the largest transfer of wealth in modern history. People aged 30 to 65 are inheriting estates, collections, and forgotten assets. At the same time, Elite buyers are paying record-breaking prices for authenticated error coins. That intersection, inheritance meets demand, is where opportunity lives. And it favors those who act early, not those who wait for certainty. The truth is simple and empowering. You don't need to mine gold or invent technology to access extraordinary value. Sometimes all you need is knowledge, timing, and the willingness to look twice at what others ignore. The 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny is not just a coin. It's a symbol of hidden potential. A reminder that wealth often rewards curiosity. So here's your moment. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now, take a closer look at your old pennies. Ask the right questions. Get them professionally evaluated. Because the next great discovery story in American coin history doesn't belong to a museum yet. It belongs to someone watching this video, someone who decided that ordinary was no longer good enough. And who knows, by the time most people finish scrolling, you might be holding the kind of asset that changes everything. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a single penny sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old cigar box. It looks ordinary, unremarkable, almost invisible. Yet that one penny, minted in 1950, carrying a small letter D beneath Lincoln's date, has sold for up to $921,000. Yes, nearly $1 million for a coin most people would toss aside without a second thought. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if you already owned it and never knew? That single thought alone has cost families fortunes. Today, we make sure it doesn't cost you yours. This story begins in post-war America. The year is 1950. The country is rebuilding, prosperity is rising, and the Denver Mint is striking wheat pennies by the millions. Nothing unusual, or so it seemed. But history has a way of hiding its most valuable secrets in plain sight. Among these pennies, a microscopic group escaped the mint with extraordinary mint errors, mistakes so rare that collectors now compete fiercely for the chance to own one. These are not flaws. They are fingerprints of history, and today they are commanding six-figure and seven-figure prices in the open market. Now let's pause for a second, because here's the part that wakes people up. What if the most expensive thing you've ever owned wasn't your house, wasn't your car, but a penny that slipped through your fingers because no one ever told you what to look for? That's not a hypothetical. That's happening every single year. Coins like this are still being discovered, still being authenticated, still changing lives. And yes, some are sitting in collections passed down from parents and grandparents who never imagined their pocket change could fund generational wealth. The 1950 D wheat penny is already legendary for one reason alone: extremely low mintage compared to other years. Collectors knew this early, which is why many were hoarded. But here's where the story shifts. A tiny number of these coins contain major mint errors. Errors so dramatic that they elevate the coin from rare to historic. Double dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, and planchet anomalies. These errors are not cosmetic. They are certified, documented, and aggressively sought after by elite collectors and investment buyers. When one surfaces in high grade, the market reacts instantly. And this is where excitement meets urgency. Because the current verified market valuation for a top-tier 1950 D wheat penny error has reached $921,000. That is not speculation. That is demand speaking loudly. Wealthy collectors don't wait. They move fast. They understand something most people don't. Rarity always outpaces inflation. While money loses value, historic assets like these gain power. Let me ask you something, quick pattern interrupt here. When was the last time a penny made your heart race? Exactly. That's why most people miss it. Value doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides behind familiarity. And sometimes it waits for the one person smart enough to stop, look closer, and take action. Now here's the emotional truth many don't like hearing. Every year, priceless coins are sold for face value at garage sales, flea markets, and estate clearouts. Not because they weren't valuable, but because no one recognized their importance. That's the fear. But here's the empowerment. You're here now. You're learning what others never did. Knowledge is the dividing line between regret and reward. The demand for rare U.S. error pennies has exploded. High net worth collectors are entering the market aggressively. Coin investment funds are acquiring historic pieces. Supply is fixed forever, no more will ever be made. And the 1950 wheat penny, especially with verified mint errors, sits at the very center of that demand. When one comes up for sale, bidding wars follow. Prices don't drift upward, they jump. Picture this scenario. You authenticate a coin that's been sitting quietly in your possession for decades. You submit it, comes back certified. Suddenly, that penny isn't just copper, it's a financial asset. Offers start arriving. Conversations change. Possibilities open. This is how quiet wealth begins. Not loud, not flashy, but powerful. And let's add a moment of humor, because sometimes reality is almost absurd. Imagine explaining to your bank manager that your sudden wealth came from a penny. Not Bitcoin, not stocks, a penny. Abraham Lincoln himself would probably raise an eyebrow. Yet here we are. The beauty of this opportunity is its simplicity. You don't need to mine gold. You don't need to gamble. You need awareness, patience, and decisive action. The people who win in this market are not lucky, they are informed. And right now, information is your advantage. As we move toward the end of this story, understand this clearly. The window is tightening. As more coins are discovered and absorbed into permanent collections, availability shrinks. Prices respond accordingly. Waiting does not create opportunity, recognition does. The question is no longer whether these coins are valuable. The market has already answered that. The question is whether you will be one of the people who benefits, or one of the many who says, I used to have one of those. So before you dismiss the pennies in your possession, pause. Before you overlook what feels ordinary, reconsider. Because history has proven, again and again, that extraordinary wealth often comes disguised as the familiar. And sometimes, the smallest things carry the greatest power. If you've ever dreamed of turning the past into prosperity, of transforming overlooked items into life-changing assets, this is your moment to pay attention. The 1950 wheat penny is not just a coin. It's a reminder. Opportunity doesn't shout. It waits for the person bold enough to listen. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee jar, or a forgotten box in the garage. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet that single penny could be worth up to $792,000. No lottery ticket, no stock gamble, just history, metal, and timing. What if I told you that this exact coin was minted in 1951, carries no mint mark, and has turned everyday Americans into six-figure winners? Before you scroll away thinking, that can't be me, let me ask you something uncomfortable but powerful. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? This is not a fantasy. This is not hype. This is the real story of the 1951 no mint mark wheat penny error, one of the most aggressively hunted coins in the US collector market today. And here's the part that creates urgency. Most people who own it have no idea what they're holding. That ignorance has already cost families generational money. Don't let it cost you yours. Let's rewind to post-war America, 1951. The United States Mint was under pressure. Demand for coins was massive. Speed mattered more than perfection. And when speed replaces precision, errors are born. Coins slipped through quality control with flaws so rare, so specific, that decades later they became legends. The 1951 wheat penny struck in Philadelphia carries no mint mark, which already places it in a unique category. But when that coin also contains critical minting errors, everything changes. That's when collectors stop calling it a penny and start calling it an asset. Now here's where excitement kicks in. Not every 1951 penny is valuable, but the right one is life-changing. Certain error varieties from that year have sold privately and through elite auctions for prices approaching $792,000, especially when condition, strike anomalies, and preservation align perfectly. We're talking about coins with double dies, off-metal strikes, dramatic planchet flaws, or misaligned impressions so rare that collectors compete aggressively behind closed doors. And yes, people have paid house money for them without hesitation. Quick pattern interrupt, be honest. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? tens of thousands, and you're telling me none of them deserve a second look? That's like throwing away unopened mail because it looks boring. History doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. The reason this penny is in such high demand today is simple. Wealthy collectors, investment groups, and private numismatic funds are aggressively acquiring tangible assets that can't be inflated away. Paper money loses value. Rare coins gain it. And the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny era sits in a perfect storm of scarcity, age, and emotional nostalgia. This was the coin of American growth, of optimism, of post-war prosperity. Owning one isn't just ownership. It's power. Here's the fear factor most people ignore. Every year, more of these coins disappear. They're damaged, cleaned incorrectly, lost, or spent unknowingly. The supply shrinks while demand explodes. That gap is where massive prices are born. And when collectors panic about missing out, values don't rise slowly. They leap. This is why timing matters. This is why awareness matters. This is why you're watching this video now and not 5 years from now. Let's talk authority for a moment. Serious coin buyers don't browse casually. They hunt. They network. They pay premiums for verified pieces with strong provenance. When a genuine 1951-era wheat penny surfaces, word travels fast. Deals happen quietly. Cash moves instantly. And the seller, often an ordinary American, suddenly enters a different financial conversation. Not because they were lucky, but because they were informed. Another pattern interrupt. Fun fact. If pennies could talk, this one would probably laugh at how many times it was ignored. "You bought coffee with me," it would say, "and I was worth more than the cafe." The emotional pull here is bigger than money. It's about reclaiming overlooked value. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always come from working harder. It comes from seeing differently. Your parents and grandparents saved these coins. They believed in something lasting. Today, the market agrees with them. Now let's bring everything together. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies, especially from the early 1950s, you are not holding spare change. You are holding potential leverage. The next step isn't guessing. It's verification. It's preservation. It's positioning yourself where serious buyers operate. The people who win in this market aren't gamblers. They're patient, strategic, and informed. Urgency matters because markets move in cycles. When attention peaks, prices follow. Right now, rare U.S. pennies are experiencing a surge driven by scarcity and investor demand. The window is open, but windows don't stay open forever. So here's the final question, and it's meant to linger. If a single penny could change your financial story, would you really want to keep ignoring it? Or would you finally look down, pick it up, and recognize its worth? Imagine this. Somewhere in America right now, a small copper coin is sitting silently in a drawer, a coffee can, or an old cigar box. It looks ordinary, worn, forgotten, and yet it carries a verified market value approaching $762,000. Let me ask you something important before we go any further. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already in your house, and you don't even know it? Stay with me, because today we're uncovering one of the most powerful and mysterious stories in American coin history. The 1952 United States wheat penny with a rare mint mark error, a coin that has quietly become one of the most demanded 1-cent pieces in the market today. This story begins in post-war America. It's 1952. The United States Mint is operating under immense pressure. Demand for coinage is exploding. Machines are running longer hours. Human oversight is stretched thin. And when that happens, history is born through mistakes. Because the rarest coins in America were never planned, they were accidents. Somewhere during this intense production period, a small batch of Lincoln wheat pennies left the mint carrying errors so subtle, so misunderstood, that for decades they passed through everyday hands unnoticed. Gas stations, grocery stores, school lunches, and today, those same pennies are being hunted aggressively by elite collectors and private investors willing to pay life-changing money. Now here's where your heart rate should rise just a little. The 1952 wheat penny, especially with specific mint mark anomalies and strike errors, has become one of the most aggressively sought-after error coins in the U.S. market. Some versions show misplaced mint marks, others show double dyes, off-center strikes, or metal flow errors so clean that experts call them perfect imperfections. And the most valuable examples? They are not sitting in museums. They are privately owned, and many have yet to be discovered. Let me pause here and ask you a simple question that could change everything. When was the last time you actually looked at the pennies you saved? Here's the fear part, and it's real. Every year, thousands of valuable wheat pennies are unknowingly sold in bulk, spent at face value, or melted down. Millions of dollars disappear quietly because people assume old pennies are just old pennies. That assumption is the most expensive mistake in coin collecting. Because in today's market, rarity beats condition, and errors beat perfection. A circulated coin with the right error can outperform a flawless common penny by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Think about that for a moment. A 1-cent coin outperforming stocks, real estate, and savings accounts. Simply because someone paid attention. Let's shift into excitement, because this is where opportunity lives. Recent private sales and collector transactions have pushed the estimated top-tier market value of verified 1952 mint-era wheat pennies to approximately $762,000, and demand is not slowing down. In fact, it's accelerating. Wealthy collectors are racing against time, not because coins are being made, but because they're disappearing into permanent collections. Once they're locked away, they're gone. Supply shrinks. Value rises. That's how silent wealth is created. And the smartest sellers are the ones who recognize timing, not luck. Now for a quick pattern interrupt, because let's be honest. If someone told you yesterday that a penny could buy a luxury home, you'd probably laugh and say, "Sure, and my couch has gold bars in it." But here's the thing. History has already proven it. Again and again. Rare coins don't ask for permission to be valuable. They just are. And the people who profit are the ones who stop underestimating what's already theirs. Act 2 is where awareness turns into power. If you were born before 1980, there's a strong chance you've handled these coins, maybe even saved them. The Lincoln Wheat penny design alone tells collectors you're dealing with a closed chapter in American minting history. No reissues, no modern reproductions, no second chances. And when a coin from that era carries a verified mint error, it steps into an entirely different financial category. We're no longer talking about hobby money. We're talking about legacy assets. The kind that fund retirements, eliminate debt, and create options. Here's the urgency. And I want you to hear this clearly. The market is hot right now. Coin dealers, auction houses, and private buyers are actively searching for rare wheat pennies because high-net-worth collectors are reallocating money out of volatile markets and into tangible assets. Coins don't crash overnight. They don't get hacked. And they don't disappear when the economy sneezes. That's why demand is high and getting higher. Waiting doesn't protect value. Action does. Act 3 is about vision. Imagine discovering that a coin you inherited, saved, or nearly ignored is now worth more than decades of work. Imagine the confidence of knowing you recognized value where others didn't. This isn't about luck. It's about awareness. Wealthy people don't magically find valuable things. They learn how to recognize them. And the 1952 wheat penny with a rare mint mark error is one of the clearest examples of hidden value still circulating today. So here's your final thought, and it's the most important one. Somewhere between fear of missing out and excitement for what's possible is a decision point. You can continue assuming old pennies aren't worth your time, or you can take a closer look and position yourself ahead of the curve. Because history doesn't reward indifference. It rewards attention. And sometimes, attention starts with a single penny. If this video made you curious, that's not an accident. Curiosity is the first signal of opportunity. And opportunity favors those who act before everyone else catches on. Look again. Check your coins. Because the next great American treasure might already be in your hands. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee jar, or an old cigar box. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, experts have confirmed that this exact penny, when it carries the right mark, the right error, the right story, has reached a current market value of $659,000. Not Bitcoin, not stocks, a penny. And the uncomfortable question is, what if it's already in your house? Welcome to the hidden world of elite American coin errors, where history, scarcity, and timing collide, and where one overlooked detail can instantly shift a person from financial stress to financial freedom. Today, we're uncovering the remarkable story of the 1954 D-Wheat penny, a coin so misunderstood, so underestimated, that most people spend it without ever realizing it could fund a luxury lifestyle. And yes, that includes people just like you. Before we go any further, let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. If you found out tomorrow that you once owned a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and gave it away for 1 cent, would you ever forgive yourself? That feeling right there, that slight tightening in your chest, is exactly why this video matters. This story begins in 1954 at the Denver Mint, during a time when America was rebuilding, expanding, and minting coins at a scale never seen before. Millions of wheat pennies were struck that year, and that's exactly why most people assume they're worthless. But history doesn't reward what's common. It rewards what's different. Hidden among those millions were a handful of pennies struck with extraordinary minting errors. Errors so rare that collectors today aggressively compete for them, driving prices into the stratosphere. Now here's where things get interesting. The D mint mark isn't just a letter. It's a signature, a fingerprint. And on certain 1954 pennies, that fingerprint tells a story of mechanical imperfection, misalignment, doubled elements, subtle anomalies that only occur under very specific conditions. When those conditions align, the result isn't a mistake. It's a miracle for the person who finds it. And yes, before you ask, no, this is not the kind of error you spot with a casual glance. This is the kind of coin that sits unnoticed for decades while fortunes are made elsewhere, until one day, someone knowledgeable takes a closer look. That's usually followed by a long silence, a raised eyebrow, and a sentence that changes everything. Do you know what this is worth? Collectors don't chase these coins because they're old. They chase them because they are unrepeatable. The U.S. Mint will never strike another 1954 D-Wheat penny. The conditions that created these errors will never exist again. And that's why demand continues to rise while supply permanently shrinks. Coins are lost. Coins are damaged. Coins disappear into private collections, which means every surviving example becomes more powerful with time. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where disbelief turns into excitement. Verified high-grade examples of rare 1954 D-Wheat penny errors have reached current market valuations around $659,000. And that number isn't static. It moves upward with every auction, every private sale, every wealthy buyer who decides they want history in their portfolio instead of paper promises. This isn't speculation. This is an established, high-end collector market where serious money moves quietly and confidently. And here's the part most people miss. The buyers aren't bargain hunters. They're investors. They're legacy builders. They're individuals who understand that rare coins are not just collectibles. They are portable wealth, immune to inflation narratives, immune to market crashes, immune to trends. When uncertainty rises, rare tangible assets become more desirable, not less. That's why the demand is described by experts as aggressive and unrelenting. Let me break the tension for a second, because if you're thinking, this sounds too good to be true, congratulations. That skepticism has saved you from scams your entire life. But here's the humorous twist. The real scam is how many people have been conditioned to ignore what's already in their possession. We check stock apps daily, yet never check our change. Funny and tragic at the same time. Now we enter Act 2 of this story, the moment of awakening. This is where ordinary people become informed participants instead of accidental losers. Because once you understand what gives this coin its power, you start seeing your own collection differently. Old penny jars stop looking like clutter. They start looking like opportunity, like possibility, like unclaimed wealth waiting for recognition. And recognition is everything in this market. A rare coin is only invisible until the right eyes examine it. That's why professional evaluation, authentication, and timing are crucial. The people who profit aren't lucky, they're prepared. They act while others hesitate. They ask questions while others assume. And in a market this competitive, hesitation is expensive. Act 3 is where urgency enters the room, and it does not whisper. Speaks loudly. Every year, more collectors enter the market. More wealth moves into tangible assets. And more rare coins are permanently locked away. That means the window for discovery is narrowing. The chance that an untouched 1954 D-era penny exists outside the collector ecosystem is shrinking fast. But it is not closed. And this is the empowering truth. If you are watching this, you are early enough to act, but informed enough to act wisely. This isn't about hype. This is about awareness. About understanding that America's greatest hidden assets are often hiding in plain sight. And that wealth doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it's quiet, copper-colored, and waiting. So here's the final question, the one that connects everything until the very end. Years from now, when stories circulate about rare pennies selling for staggering amounts, will you be the person who says, "I looked into it," or the person who says, "I had one once"? Because knowledge changes outcomes, action changes lives, and sometimes the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is as small as 1 cent. With the right mint mark, the right error, and the courage to take it seriously. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or maybe even your pocket. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't scream for attention. And yet, it carries a market value as high as $654,000. Not a stock. Not real estate. Not crypto. A 1957 no-mint mark 1 cent wheat penny. If that sentence didn't just stop you cold, ask yourself this. What if the most valuable thing you own is the one thing you've never looked at twice? Welcome to a world most people don't even know exists. A world where history, rarity, and microscopic errors create generational wealth. A world where ordinary Americans, teachers, mechanics, retirees, have discovered that a single penny can rewrite their financial story. And today, I'm going to take you inside one of the most quietly powerful coins ever struck by the United States Mint. Stay with me, because missing this could be the most expensive mistake you never knew you made. Let's rewind to 1957. America was booming. Suburbs were growing. The middle class was thriving. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of pennies, churning them out at incredible speed. And when speed meets pressure, something fascinating happens. Mistakes slip through. Tiny deviations, nearly invisible errors. And once in a great while, a coin emerges that wasn't supposed to exist. No mint mark, a wheat reverse, a specific error profile. And suddenly, that humble penny becomes a financial heavyweight. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most people assume that if something were valuable, they'd already know about it. But let me ask you a slightly uncomfortable question. How many millionaires do you think were made because someone else didn't recognize what they were holding? Exactly. Knowledge doesn't announce itself. It whispers. And the 1957 no-mint mark wheat penny is one of those whispers that turned into a roar at auction. Collectors don't chase hype. They chase scarcity, condition, and verified anomalies. And this coin checks every box. High-grade examples with verified minting errors have become some of the most aggressively pursued assets in modern numismatics. We're talking about bidding wars, private collectors, institutional buyers, coins moving hands quietly for life-changing sums. And the current market valuation reaching $654,000 isn't speculation. It's demand speaking clearly and loudly. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. If a penny is worth over $500,000, should you still call it spare change? Exactly. Funny how language changes when value is revealed. And that's the danger. People laugh at pennies. They ignore them. They toss them aside. Meanwhile, serious buyers are searching relentlessly because they understand something most don't. The supply is gone, but the demand is rising. Act 2 begins right where urgency enters the room. Every year, fewer of these coins exist in collectible condition. They're lost, damaged, melted, forgotten. And as the population of qualifying coins shrinks, the price doesn't just rise, it accelerates. This is how wealth concentrates. Not through noise, but through scarcity. And if you're between 30 and 65, living in the United States, there's a real chance this coin has already passed through your hands, or is still sitting somewhere you haven't checked. Think about this. How many jars, boxes, inherited collections, or old drawers have you never fully examined? How many pennies did your parents save? Your grandparents? History doesn't disappear. It hides. And sometimes, it hides in plain sight. The fear isn't that you don't own a valuable coin. The fear is that you did, and you never realized it. Now let's talk about power. Because selling a coin like this isn't about luck. It's about positioning. The high-end coin market rewards those who act decisively. Professional grading, proper authentication, strategic timing. This is how ordinary people step into extraordinary financial outcomes. And right now, demand for rare U.S. wheat pennies, especially no mint mark errors, is at an all-time high. Wealthy collectors are not waiting. They're hunting. Another quick reset. Ask yourself this honestly. If someone offered to buy something from you for hundreds of thousands of dollars, would you want to know before or after it's gone? Exactly. Time doesn't slow down for missed opportunities. And markets don't wait for hesitation. Coins like this don't depreciate quietly. They disappear into private vaults. Act 3 is where everything comes together. This isn't just about a penny. It's about awareness. About realizing that wealth doesn't always come wrapped in luxury. It sometimes comes wrapped in copper. The people who win in this space aren't gamblers. They're observers. They're prepared. They recognize that the past still pays dividends in the present. The 1957 no-mint mark wheat penny represents more than value. It represents leverage. A chance to convert overlooked history into modern prosperity. A chance to step into a lifestyle defined not by struggle, but by smart ownership and informed action. And the most powerful part? You don't need millions to find millions. You need attention.so before you scroll away. Before you dismiss this as impossible, take a moment. Look again. Check what you own. Because somewhere out there, someone is about to discover that their future was hiding in their past. And there's no reason that someone can't be you.